My name's Eric Crump. Welcome to the next episode of Meet the Candidates, a series of interviews sponsored by the Homewood Flossmoor Chronicle. Today we're talking with Carolyn Rodgers, who's running for Flossmoor Board of Trustees. Thank you for joining us, Carolyn. We appreciate you spending the time with us today to talk about why you're running, and that's the first question. What made you decide to run for the Flossmoor Board of Trustees?
Thank you first of all for having me. To be honest, I had never thought about running for trustee. This actually came about just with me talking with community members, listening to their concerns. I've been active in the school district, room parent, part of the PTO, been always active in sports, always active in community engagement, part of a bunch of different boards that are youth-based, some are professional-based. And it was the community members that actually said, we think you'd be a good person to run. And I said, one of the first things that I did tell them, I said, well, I don't know about politics because I have a strong spiritual background. And for me, that was one of the things that was conflicting, because I know that I'm not going to bend for certain things, because if it goes against my morals and values is going to win. So I had to think about this for a while. And to be honest, the day that I started getting petitions, which was October 5th, I was going to go by my parents' house and ask my dad. My dad I didn't get by there because I started getting petitions, and I was getting text messages and invited to come to other events to meet people. And I was enjoying it because, I used to be a part of community organizing. My background is in public health, so I'm used to being out in the field. And I didn't get by my parents' house to ask my dad. He passed away that night. Well, probably about 4 o'clock that morning. So I was going to go by that Sunday to ask him what he thought about it. And I had already collected signatures, and I never got a chance to ask him. So, I talked to my mom about it. Her biggest concern was, it's politics, and we're looking at the surrounding communities. And, when you put yourself out there, it is a big risk for your family members. And so that's always been my concern. I don't have anything to hide. My family doesn't have anything to hide, but I have children, I have a husband, they're private individuals. How is this going to affect them with me putting my head in to be a voice for the community members? Because people that know me know that I'm an honest person. They know that I have integrity, and they know that right is right. So when it comes down to me, they also know that when I put my foot forward, it's going to be 100%. So that was the other concern, was, do I have time to do this? Because that was one of the things that I had already went through with my family. Coaching, that's a lot. And I was working full time as a professor and a part of board. So it was like, okay, I'm going to be giving up time again, to do something for the people. And my husband and my children have been very gracious to allow me to do those things. And it was one more ask. And actually, my husband was on board. So that is the main reason why I decided to go ahead and do it, because I know that I have integrity. I know that I'm honest. And I know that I'll be the voice that the people of Flossmoor want to hear, because I listen to folks. I am a very good communicator, and I'm a very good perceiver of what people are actually trying to say. Oftentimes, a lot of people will talk to me that they're not, for some reason, people open up to me, and I get information that they wouldn't normally share. And so that was one of the reasons why I said, well, I think I'll go ahead and, do this.
Well, you mentioned that you've been listening to people and that they encourage you to run. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about the issues that they prioritize and that you would bring to the board if you're elected.
Well, to be honest, a lot of the issues that many of the community members have are some of the same issues that I have. I mean, that's really how the conversations always start. Sometimes I'll go up to the school, pick up my son, and we'll just be standing out there talking. I'll see people. I'm an approachable individual, or if I have questions, I'm going to ask. That's one thing that my mom always taught us, is that there's no dumb question. And as a professor, I found out that that's true, because there's always somebody thinking the same thing. So some of the concerns for me have always been one of the things I am is a runner. So in the summer times, I like to run on the streets. I'm a sprinter at heart. I'm a hurdler by nature. Part of a master's track team that's here in the Homewood-Flossmoor area. But in the summertime, that's the one time I really get a chance to get outside, get on the road, and I enjoy that. That's a time for me to, receive solitude and spiritual knowledge, And I've always noticed when I'm out there running the streets, especially on my block. I'm on Douglas, one of the worst in the Heather Hill area, and Scott Crescent, unfortunately. And that was one of the concerns that I brought up when Mayor Nelson actually was running for mayor. She called and said she was also a runner. And I said, well, the streets is one of my concerns, because that brings the property values down. That's one of the things that helps with the beautification of a community. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of outdoors women and men in our community that walk, the children are outside. And so I'm always looking at those things, the aesthetics. And that was one of my biggest concerns. From there, then it was the concern about, what was happening with the police department. One of the highlights was the death of Madeline, Miss Madeline, when she was actually shot, on her doorstep with a knife, and my husband is in law enforcement, so he and I had serious dialogue about that, because one of the things that most people don't know is that a knife can be very deadly. But the question is, was the use of force that was done necessary? So that was always a debate, So that was the first, I would say, nudge. The second nudge was the firing of Chief Jarrell. And so that made me pay even more attention to say what's going on here, and that was me finding out that there weren't the checks and balances that we thought were within the government. Then the next nudge was the Viaduct project, because that directed me. That really impacted me, because I have a son that's over at Heather Hill. He's in second grade, and we did not know that was going to be a detention basin. There's already several in our community, right down the street on Scott Crescent. And that was a big concern, because I ride past, I'm always talking with the children and looking at, some of the things that they're doing. And I had already caught a child before in the one that's adjacent to Heather Hill, trying to get a basketball out, and it was frozen. And I told him, I said, get out of there. You don't know how deep that is. So now we have one in, behind the school where we've lost green space, and we were blindsided. And the community's voice was not heard, because by the time we found out and we did show up to say no, the decision was already made, and the trustees, they're our voice. They're supposed to also be our ears, to let us know what's going on with transparency. But when you have terms and communication that is not meeting the needs of everybody, then you run into some of those issues.
I wonder if we could talk a little bit more, kind of dive in a little deeper to that basin communication and inclusion issue, because the village officials point out that there were public hearings. It was discussed at board meetings. There was one or two open house events and publications in the Chronicle, and still it didn't reach everyone, and that is a problem, because we're pushing a lot of information out, but is it being pushed out effectively? Right. So I'm wondering what could have been done differently, or what do you think could be done the next time we have a big project like that to get more people involved?
Well, I think one of the issues that we're trying to solve right now is that these associations, like we now have the Heather Hill Association, that's a big one. Getting more people involved. There's a lot of renters in the community. And then there's parents that are busy, with work related things and timing. Sometimes there are events that the time doesn't meet the flexibility of the community members. I know for me, there's been some times where I've missed because I've been teaching at night, and I think that's one of the biggest things, and also when the information is released, because a lot of times we get information late, and at that time, we already have other things planned. So that's one of the things that I've been looking at, and I think also the communication channels, because not everybody, unfortunately, reads the newspaper. Some people are not online. That's one of the issues that I'm faced with as being on the communication committee for APHA. We have to utilize all the channels because each channel targets a different population by age, gender, things of that nature. And so I think that the city government needs to really explore those options to find out who's reading what, who's participating in what applications, things of that nature, and the communication would actually be better processed that way. For Heather Hill, I think we are trying to do a better job now with the associations, but then there's other communities in Flossmoor that don't have associations. Flossmoor has one, and then there's Ballantrae, but from what I'm hearing, theirs is not as active as some of the others. So that's an issue, and so there needs to be someone going around to find out what is the best way for you to communicate, to individuals. Is it by email? Is it by, postcard where we drop something in the mail? Is it by the Chronicle? All of those things are some of the things that we do need to look at. And with this younger generation, they're using TikTok and Snap, so should we be utilizing those platforms,
Really look at that and ask where people are. Yeah, right. We do too. This is a little bit different than the communication, but it has to do with the village and how it can best support part of the community, and that is the business community.
Right.
I know, and you're aware probably because you're paying attention to meetings, that there has been an effort to increase economic development by bringing in more retail businesses. And we also have a lot of small businesses that are still sometimes struggling. I mean, there's some do well, but it's a tough go for really small businesses.
Right.
And I didn't know if you had ideas about what the village can do to better promote their success, the small business success.
Yes. So, I've met with a lot of the business owners over the years and recently, but a lot of my interactions have just happened upon some of these business owners out and about. And so a lot of my interactions had nothing to do with me running for trustee. And what I found out with a lot of the business owners, they have very good intentions, but many of them are not skilled in marketing. Many of them, they have a passion for a certain industry, but no one has actually taught them to put together a business plan, how to get their business known. And that's really been the biggest, I would say, challenge for a lot of the businesses, especially the small businesses. The larger businesses, they get it because they have the resources, behind them to fund those sort of things. But in communicating with many of these organizations, that's been the issue. And so the best thing I feel that Flossmoor could do is, maybe have some experienced business owners or even retirees give back and have workshops for many of these business owners to show them how to run their business properly, how to keep it sustainable. That's one of the things that I deal with just grant writing and research. It's always a sustainability issue. If you're going to receive this funding, they want to know how is it going to be sustained once we stop giving you that money. And many of the business owners that I've talked with, they have no experience in that. They don't actually have the resources for it either. And they don't find out until they get in business. Another reason why I know this is because one of the things that I do is business consulting. Because being in public health, a lot of people come to me, they want a 1023, consultation. They want a business plan. They want to know how to establish, these non-for-profits or LLCs. And they don't know what comes next. What you're going to have to turn in, file an article of incorporation every year. You're going to have to pay these fees. They don't know those things. And so that all of those are part of business operations that if Flossmoor could assist those individuals in doing that, I think we'd have better operating small businesses. But then we also have an issue where we, need more businesses to bring in money for taxes. I know that'd help me out a lot. And to be honest, that's been my communication with a lot of the seniors. That's been a thing to push them out because our taxes, are constantly being raised, especially in Cook County. That was one of the biggest things, even with, some of the homes being improperly assessed and the state knowing it and didn't do anything about it. That's one of the things I had to help my parents with. My dad was a Vietnam vet, so in Cook County, he wasn't supposed to be paying taxes. Well, last year actually, before he passed away, I had to help my mom out with that. So I understand that issue very clearly because without businesses that can help leverage that for us, then we're in a situation where it's not going to be a good deal.
That is an issue. The property tax rates spiking last year is a big problem for communities all around. And I know that municipalities have a limited impact. Their bills are kind of a small portion of that. But what do you think the village could do, even though it can't change the bill radically?
Right.
Are there things the village can do to help, advocate for change or something? Yeah.
I mean, the other thing I look at that too is education, because when I look and trace my steps going to the township with my mom, there were people in there that I ended up helping because they were in similar situations. There were two women in there, coming in to bring their father documentation, who was also a veteran. His taxes should have been slated. Different situation with me was that my dad was at 100% disability. So for him, there was no taxes, but he got a tax bill. And he just happened to be in the hospital when that tax bill came. So I had to go with my mom and be her voice, so to speak, because I understood what was going on. But there were a lot of people sitting in there that didn't know. So I would say education is the biggest piece. What I've learned, especially when it comes to government forms, people don't think that they can fill out those forms. That's something that I've noticed even when it comes down to students filling out a financial aid form or, the FAFSA form. I get so many people to say, can you help me fill this out? And really, it sounds simple because it really is just reading and comprehension. But if a person is not familiar with it, that a lot of folks are fearful that if they fill it out wrong, they're not going to get these benefits that they actually need. And so if we could set up something like that is not only at the townships, because you have everybody coming there from all of the other cities, maybe we could set something up like that in our village to help individuals out, because you'd be surprised how many people are fearful of filling out forms or understanding some of the questions that are on the forms. That's one of the biggest things that I do. And that's, like I said, that's part of the reason why a lot of people come to me when they want to establish businesses, understand a 1023 application or the Articles of Incorporation or an LLC with, the state of Illinois. It's just reading the instructions, but because the instructions, number one, are written in, 4 or 5 point font, they're like, this is a lot, so I don't want to go through this. Can you help me with it? That's, and really they just need a resource person. So if the village could have a resource person that is willing to sit there and go over some of these forms, we have a lot of educated individuals in this community. Some, this really could be a volunteer job. We have a lot of retirees, especially in the Heather Hill community, that would not mind doing something like this. And so we could utilize those resources. That would be a big plus to many of the community members in in Flossmoor.
Village just coordinate things, right?
Just coordinating.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered some of the main issues we wanted to bring up, but I wanted to let you get the last word. Are there things that we haven't talked about that are really important to you and to your service to the community if you're elected?
To be honest, things that are important to me is I love the diversity that we have here in Flossmoor. I feel like a lot of the issues that we've faced in the past have created a divide that needs to be brought back together, because it's not the Ballantrae community or the Flossmoor Hills community or the Heather Hill. It's everybody. And that's what needs to occur, because what I've seen is that some of these issues have sort of split people up into silos, and the issues represent us all. So we need some healing, which is one of the things that, when it comes to diversity, equity and inclusion, those are some of the things that we need to be discussing. So, like I said, I love the community. I have children across all 3 schools, so I get a chance to see the different dynamics. But I think that's one of the main things that concern me, is that we remain a cohesive community, and that we are in it for the whole community and not just for a particular community, a particular subset of the community. We're in it for everybody, because when you're in it for everybody, then everybody wins.
All right.
That's it.
Great. Well, thank you so much again for joining us and sharing your ideas and your priorities.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate that.